Motherfucker!
Drop them now!
Shit! Let's go! I see him! Right over here! God damn it! Fucking get off me!
Come on. Ready when you are.
Hey guys, hope you're all doing very well this fine day. Just watched the Gladiator 2 trailer, and I figured I'd just, share some thoughts on it. Okay, look, obviously it has diversity higher Denzel in it, but quite frankly you get a diversity pass for either Denzel Washington or Samuel L. Jackson, just, outright due to their quality. But then it has like spoken rap in the trailer, and that mix of culture is just not great. I've got some thoughts about that.
Drop them now!
Righto, so when it comes to rap and its influence on black culture, like its suggestion, as well as like the enablement by the Democrat policy, Just to put it into perspective, it's had like a major negative impact on the black community. Like at one point it was like 2 million abortions of black babies like a year. I'm not sure if that's changed or not, but like quite frankly to me that sounds like genocide levels of disastrous policy, right? Like that right there is a culture desperately in need of reform. And like I think it stems from the suggestion in gangster rap and the ho female rap. I think those forms of popular culture not only act as suggestion, but they tie success in their respective cultural communities to crime, status, and with the ho rap, like directly to sex appeal, bedroom technique, and promiscuity. And like all that is just incredibly shallow and superficial, and it tends to reward people for being promiscuous and impulsively violent and dominant through gang violence in the culture, basically. And don't mistake me, when I say black culture, I do mean the culture. It doesn't have like anything to do with race. As stated before, like I'm not of the opinion that the bell curve is correct with its racial assertions of IQ. I think it stems from culture. As stated before, I think culture acts as a trellis for the people to grow around. If I'm being honest, it does seem that trellis has succeeded in deforming black communities. And I say succeeded because I'm pretty sure like that was deliberate on part of the Democrat policies to keep the black areas down. But like when you see shit like that statistic I mentioned before with the abortion like total for the black community being like a clean 2 mil, like that's 2 million babies ripped apart with gripping tongs in wombs out of convenience because of impulse control in a community because of the superficial popular culture and the suggestion in that. Like, that's not the only issue there either. It's like 1 in 4 are involved with the prison system. Like 67% of them, like 2/3 of black children are like born to single parents. And like from there, being like a child of a single parent, you're much more likely to get involved with drugs and crime and have mental illness. And since you don't have a father, you're also like more likely to seek male hierarchy and like gang crime and that sort of thing. Like it's hard to say. Like it's pretty obvious to me with the policy that the Democrats were deliberately trying to do it, and it's hard to say that it didn't succeed. Then, of course, after all of that, the reality feeds the stereotype, with the 11% of people being responsible for like 50 to 60% of the crime, and culture elsewhere turns on it. You've created conflict in your society, and like as stated before, all of that has nothing to do with race. It only has to do with culture and policy and path of least resistance and suggestion, right? And here you've got that culture directly injected into this trailer, a sequel of a beloved IP. It seems like subversion again. So like that's just a yikes there. What did I like in it though? Let's try and be a bit more positive. I like the rhino combat. I like the sand throwing in the eye. I like the dirty tricks shit. I like the flooding of the arena. That's historically accurate. They did flood the arena for massive ship battles, and it's going to be cool to see them represent it in a medium. So it's not just in your mind's eye, and it's like hard to picture what that looks like in your mind's eye. So I think that's cool as well, like the practicals of it. I guess they're also using like Caligula and Nero figures. Like, I don't mind that. Like, it fits in the story they're trying to tell of, like, rebellion and all that sort of thing, I guess. I like how they made the Pedro Pascal general seem sort of sympathetic with him, like, waging war to feed his people. When I when I say sympathetic, that's relative, because, like, their main source of income was slaves. They waged war to capture people, to enslave them and use them for slave labor. Like, the slaves were the booty, the war booty. But, like, regardless, in the system, he seems to be trying to feed his people. So, during, like, a period of Roman decline after the emperor come to power, I guess. So, like, lawful evil within Rome's structure, I guess you'd say. So, if it does happen to sort of resemble servile wars, even though these are, like, way after the period of servile wars, because the servile wars, particularly the Spartacus one, was, like, before emperors and that sort of thing. I'd like to see them, you know, grey it up a bit. Show a bit more what happened on the slave side a bit more. Like, the slaves, like, decimated and brutalized the civilians once they escaped, and, like, freed other slaves, and the slaves did as well, like, out of resentment. And look, fair enough, but just so it's not, like, a clear-cut slaves are good, Romans are bad type deal. Like, the freed slaves did a lot of murder and rape when, like, they were given a free go, and they probably attempted to do their best to do as much as possible because they realised they were on a timer once the Roman legions come out and fucked them up. But, like, it feeds into Marxist social conditioning to always view oppressor and oppressed, right? Like, poor people and enslaved people aren't by default good. Enslavers aren't by default bad, but, like, usually they are, but, like, aren't necessarily, right? Because, like, poor, desperate people, even if they were once good, can turn on a dime when it comes to resentment and just, like, be evil as shit. There was, like, I'm pretty sure it was a Solzhenitsyn quote. It was, when the belly rumbles, the conscience flees. And that just points out a starving man will beat another man to death over fish scraps, which is something that literally happened in the gulags, right? You can be as good as you want. When you're starving to death, the stakes are raised and you're not necessarily good anymore. That's why I fucking hate bad policy so much. And all the pro-socialist shit that, like, just makes everyone hungry. But yeah, look, slaves aren't good just because they're enslaved. It's a bit of, like, a silly sort of leftist notion that rebellions and revolutions and servile wars and all those sorts of things are brutally horrible, full of violence, full of rape, full of murder, the whole thing. It's just like a silly Marxist kid glove treatment of, like, revolution as a good thing. And it's just like that simplified oppressed narrative, which is, it's not always accurate. But, like, also historically speaking, while there were emperors killed by gladiators and slaves and stuff, it was usually a lot different. Like, I'm surprised they didn't lean into this angle more, but it was usually through gay bathhouse shit. Although, you know, praetorians and generals and that sort of thing probably organised a few assassinations back in the day. Yeah.
Stick with me, love.
But a ton of this, like, appears to be during Rome's decline after it, started to get emperors and things like that. Before, especially during like the Spartacus Rebellion and the first Servile War and all that sort of thing. The first and second Servile War. The second one was Spartacus. The government structure was different. They had the Senate and they elected like 2 consuls at once to basically govern, right? The consuls then aren't like the effeminate, you know, queer, Nero, Caligula types. They were usually generals like Pompey and like Crassus to a lesser degree, although Crassus was like rich. Caesar was the other one during that period as well. But they were big on power sharing at the time, basically. It wasn't one single corrupt Roman ruler that led to the downfall of shit, if you know what I mean. Like, it was more complicated. And also the consuls, they tended to be pretty competent because they had to be. They were usually like military generals, officers, or extremely rich through successful business and stuff. It was mainly in Rome's decline that they had emperors and semi-hereditary monarchy and shit like that. That's where your Caligulas and your Neros and shit start to come in. But it's sort of like a Marxist straw man of Rome to just picture the Caligulas and the Neros all the time. It's like grossly oversimplified to try and do the oppressed narrative, right? It's like kid glove treatment. But like, again, we're judging all of this by modern day standards of democracy and everything like that. We're not judging it by the relativism of the time, like going from the consuls to the emperors and all that sort of thing. The relativism of the rights, it would have been hard to like portray. We're judging it all from modern day lens sort of thing, and you just lose a ton of context there. But like, the biggest thing here is, did it have to be Gladiator 2? It could have just been its own sort of IP. Like, did we need it to be that? Like, why can't they create their own thing? Why can't they create their own new thing? Why does it need to tie it into Gladiator? Yeah. Just makes no sense. Like, why not just do your own thing, leave the original IPs alone, and, you know, try and live on your own merit. Like, very, like, rarely are modern day sequels of old IPs good, and all of them inject, like, they seem to be attempting to deform popular culture by injecting all the woke shit into it. Like, even the really few, like, good ones, like the new Blade Runner, which is an exception, like, they even pumped the, you know, the girl boss nonsense in that. Like, speaking of girl bosses, I think women's morality is different to men's morality as well. Like, women don't tend to have any, like, morality similar to men, any duty similar to men. Like, men back in the day, particularly in Roman times, like with Caesar and everything, their narcissism was tied sort of to their state, their ambition and their narcissism. So, in order to build themselves up, they had to theoretically build Rome up and be responsible for the largest increase in Roman power. So, like, you had a sense of duty there, which, especially with female narcissism and girl bosses and everything, they don't have a sense of duty there. It all seems to be about power. It never seems to be about competence. It's always like the exercise of power. There's no hierarchical structure, probably because of the feminism itself. They view it as hierarchies as, what would you say, oppressive, patriarchal, that sort of thing. So from that perspective, there's no meritocratic hierarchy, there's only the use of power in hierarchy. And now we've got this sort of victim hierarchy where like gays and women and blacks and oppressed and all that sort of thing are like, they're given undue influence. The influence doesn't hold any responsibility. Yeah, it's fucked. Because they don't hold any responsibility, they don't have any sense of duty towards the thing it is they do. So they just take the IP, they use it psychopathically and narcissistically for their own short-term ends to push like an agenda. The IP fucking dies, and then they move on to a new IP. It's like, it's fucking horrible. It's like, it's really bad. And like, there's no sense of duty there to the culture, to the IP, to the defamation you're doing to culture and the country. It's lacking. Like, that's why I ask, do women have a sense of duty? Like, forget countries for a moment. Do they have a sense of duty to humanity, even? Like, how they select men is usually by status, right? That's not a good selector. Like, if we're going to use status as a selector for men, then they're going to select and procreate with men like politicians, sociopathic, narcissistic politicians, people like Stalin, when the men they should procreate with and, you know, spread the genes of are the individuals like, you know, Solzhenitsyn, who like spoke the truth in the gulag and suffered because of it, but suffered nobly and like never reversed himself and that sort of thing. The brave soldiers of war, the brave confident men, they shouldn't be going after pure status and shallow shit like that, like status and money. Especially these days where like the corporate structures are so horribly corrupt and influenced by government that the behaviors that are selected for in them are like deceit and deference to power and, you know, cowardice, like that sort of thing. Like, the behaviors selected for in communist hierarchies aren't communism, aren't like bravery or competence. They're usually bad traits, right? It's like narcissism, shallowness, hunger for power, you know, dark tetrad traits, basically. Women seem to select for these, right? What did Peterson say? They're after pirates and vampires and shit. So, basically given that what would you call it? Dark tetrad selection and narcissism and lack of duty. It's really not a good thing when they're given power, especially over, like, power over something that was at once a beloved IP, that was, like, very competent and done its own thing and got its position through its own merits. To allow, like, female narcissism and feminism to corrupt that and attempt to seize that thing's status and competence as their own while they make, like, inferior sequels because they control the IP and corrupt the culture and attempt to spread a gender and all that sort of shit. It's really not good. It's really bad. Like, I consider that like an extension of like the previous video where we were talking about like, has Marxism weaponized female narcissism? It seems like an extension of that to me. But yeah, look, cold reading of the trailer. Looks alright. 6 out of 10, I guess. Like, I can't picture it being like heaps good, but like Denzel Washington wouldn't have put his name on it if it was like 4 or 5 out of 10. I can't think of a Denzel Washington movie off the top of my head that was like actively bad. He usually picks scripts, you know, for a reason, I guess. But yeah, looks okay. I don't like the subversion in it. Like, I don't like the subversion in anything these days, but I don't like the idea that it's Gladiator 2. Look, I probably won't watch it at the movies. Like, I'll wait until it's cheap if I buy it at all. Might buy it off eBay so as not to support the cultural nonsense shit. Allow like an individual who bought it to recoup some of their money by buying it secondhand off eBay, rather than actively supporting the studio firsthand. Might do something like that, but yeah, I'm definitely not gonna watch it at the movies, and I'm definitely not gonna buy it outright. Yeah, like, it's not a movie like Dune where you need to watch it at the movies, like where you need to see like the Harkonnen arena fight scene at the movies and hear all the music and shit like that. It's not a movie like that, put it that way.
May she protect us. May she guide us.